everybody. Welcome to season 5 of the Profit Power Hour, presented by Profit Coach. Got a very special episode for you today. The PM Trends and PM Financial Benchmarks Sync Part 2 coming at you again. Did this last year. It was one of our best episodes of the year, if I may say so myself. And looking forward to having the same guys on this time, the co-authors of the PM Trends Report. I am your host, Brad Johnson. I'm the CEO of a company called Profit Coach. We help property managers expand entrepreneurial freedom by building highly profitable, self-managing companies. I have been the host of the Profit Power Hour here for a little over a year after taking over from my dear friend Daniel Craig. And I am now a resident of this beautiful state. Yes, people, I moved to Colorado. I did a crazy thing. Moved my whole family across the country over the last few weeks, have joined what I can already tell is the best time zone in the United States because I get to watch primetime sporting events and go to bed on time. So I live in Colorado now. It is incredible. I love the cold, dry air in the morning. Here's a picture of my kids. I always give you one every time. I didn't have a great, here's all their 3 smiling faces, but here's them being absolutely amazed by a very small digger fixing our septic system before we sold our house, which closes in a week, thank the Lord. And I have with me some fantastic panelists. I have Jordan Wela, the founder of Lead Simple, and oh, by the way, co-founder of this lovely company, Profit Coach, and the co-author of the PM Trends Report. Jordan, say hi to the people. They love you.
Hey, good to see everybody.
They love you and they are glad to see your face. And then you know him, you love him, and you love his AI generated image here. Peter Lohman, by his own admission, CEO of RL Property Management, founder of Crane, co-author of the PM Trends Report, and gives you so many scoops. We should call him the ice cream man. Peter Lohman, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Hopefully that photo isn't too obviously AI generated, but yes, it is. It's exciting to be here and chat with y'all about the PM Trends Report.
Yes, absolutely. And if you would not mind, everyone, I think it's halftime of the England game. I know you're all watching soccer pretty much while you work all day. Let's try to hold off towards the end of the webinar for the game. Please no in-game updates in the chat. But if you do have questions, you can drop those in the Q&A box. We would love to take your questions. And then, Clint Collins is already on this. No spoilers. I'm recording the England match, so please don't do that. Drop your questions in the Q&A box. Anything you have, any comments you have, anything that's like, hey, I wonder, could you talk about this, etc. Put that in the chat. We had a very lively chat last year. Hope to have another lively chat this year. Want to know what's on your mind. You have these guys' attention for the next 55 minutes. They're contractually obligated to be here and to answer all of your questions. So please do not hesitate to put them on the spot. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? I want to talk about 3 things. I want to talk about the new reality of growth and demographics. I think this was a big part of the report, a big focus of the report this year. And I think it has a lot of bearings to your property management company and how you're going to grow this year and beyond. Pricing fees and the revenue evolution of PM companies. This is probably where we'll spend the most amount of time. This was the most interesting part to me. Owners gave a lot of answers that were fairly surprising to me about how they view revenue, how they view concessions, how they view, value add opportunities, all of that. So there's a lot to pay attention to here, and we need to get into it and talk about how that will affect your revenue per unit. And then finally, a few comments, a few questions on the future of property management. What does this mean going forward? We can't predict the future. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but seeing these trends, that's the title of the report, right? It's trends. It's supposed to tell us where the puck is going, and we want to know what our panelists have to say about that. Okay, so without further ado, the PM Trends Report 2026, what 500 small landlords really think about property managers, created by Jordan and Peter, sponsored by Ranvine and Column, 2 really great companies who helped them put this together, sponsored as well by Profit Coach. We'll get into that, but we participated in this as well. Okay, first thing I want to talk about here is this demographic slide and the way that you guys framed these four categories. So, Peter, Jordan, could you explain a little bit about what you did here and why with these four paths?
Yeah, happy to. So when you're generating a lot of data like this, you're asking yourself, well, it's got all these interesting demographic insights, but what do you do about it? If people that own Great Danes make the best type of landlords, what do you do about that? What we found was that most demographics are awkward to hook into and to make usable for targeting purposes. This, by contrast, was what we found to be the demographic handle that we thought was both the most useful and actionable. And what we did here was slice out people into four different buckets. And those buckets are exiters, repositioners, holders, and expanders. Exiters, they're getting out. Repositioners are people that are buying and selling at the same time. Holders are people that are just sitting tight, they're staying in the game long term. And expanders are people that are buying, not selling. We found that this demographic distinction, more than any other, was the most interesting in terms of informative views and actionable because this is information you have at your fingertips. So we cut a lot of slices in the report using this fourfold lens.
Mm, okay. Okay. Very good. And were you surprised in any way by the makeup of this as far as what percentage of people were in each of these categories, or was this roughly what you expected once you kind of split it out?
Defer to Pete on that.
Yeah, it did surprise me. 32% expanders. I mean, that's a third of your portfolio looking to buy more or actively trying to buy more properties. That was higher than I would have guessed and very encouraging.
Mhm.
And I think that we could be doing a much better job of serving these customers. And were we to do so, it would only benefit us because they're going to bring additional properties under management. So that was the biggest surprise that I saw. The others didn't really surprise me too much. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Well, what I want to do, so this is actually before I go on, somebody help me explain this here polygon. So what are we looking at here with with these shapes and these colors? Jordan, this looks like something that you were probably behind. What exactly is this map?
This is one of those classic McKinsey charts that people pay $1 million to have printed, and it's basically just showing you a multi-point axis, right? So for every one of these PM usage, software, AI comfort, resilience, anything at the center is a low rating. Anything at the exterior, at the edge, is a high rating. So this is showing along these one, two, three, four, five, six different dimensions how these various groups rate. And what's novel here is the fact that it's shaped so coherent. Notice that these are four different groups that kind of contract really, which is odd. Any kind of a pretty looking shape in data is very rare. Typically, it's a noisy pattern. This fit really tightly. And what it goes to show is that exiters had the least resilience, the least comfort with AI, the least interest in using software, the least disposition to use a PM, the lowest approval threshold, and the lowest willingness to pay. Repositioners over indexed on all those things. So some of that's common sense, right? Somebody getting out of the business, the way they're relating, their level of enthusiasm versus pessimism is going to be way different versus somebody that is currently buying and selling. But I think it goes more than that. But that's what it was intended to illustrate.
Okay. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. All right. So that's kind of how I want to tee that up, give you a little context on the demographics part, head into our first section here, the new reality of growth. While we get into that, I want to put this poll up. So think about the doors that you've added over the last 12 months. Looking back, how would you describe that growth? So growth came mostly from and obviously this is subjective, but it's an opinion question. Growth came mostly from the right clients. Growth came from a mix of right and wrong fit clients. growth came from mostly wrong fit clients, or we haven't grown significantly. So tell me a little bit about your recent growth trajectory, who you've added and how good of a fit they've been. I'll show those poll results in a minute, and you'll see in a second why I asked that question. Okay, so the way that I want to contextualize growth in this conversation has to do with this chart. Peter's given me a head nod. I think he can relate to this because he's at the very forefront of the trough of sorrow. Now these are industry-wide numbers and industry-wide benchmarks. So this does not describe every single situation. These are obviously ranges of door counts. So I'm not saying that like the moment you hit 750 doors, like things are going to be terrible. You're going to start losing money. You're going to wish you stayed at 749. But in general, these are patterns that we see. And in all of our benchmarking studies, we've seen similar patterns, but they've come at slightly different door count sizes. In the most recent benchmark study we did last summer, we saw the biggest drop and the biggest place of difficulty to push through in that 750, 800, 850 door mark, where you have some regression in profitability. And then, as you can see here, there's also some door count sizes where we see profitability stay fairly flat, 200, 300, 400 doors. There's these nice sweet spots in the fives and sixes, and then in the 1,000 plus. So all of that to say, to contextualize some of our data into this context, to say all growth is not created equal in property management. And so do you know where you are on this growth curve relative to profitability? Because some growth, just from a door count perspective, may not be beneficial for your specific ends and purposes. So that's kind of point A. Now, point B is this other side of the coin, which is not all growth is good for profitability, at least in the short term, but then not all growth is great for your operational, from an operational standpoint or from a customer experience standpoint. We know that all units are not the same, right? All units are not created the same, and that people want to get good fit units that are a great fit for their business. But usually we differentiate that by properties. I want these sort of properties. I want Class A, I want Class B, I want single family, I want multifamily. But this conversation that they're bringing in is really interesting because this is a little bit less about the property and a little bit more about the person. And not just the person, but their behavioral motivations. So when we think about people, we often think about how we want to make sure that we will find owners who will let us do our jobs and they'll let us manage their properties the way that we want to. But I don't think we think a whole lot about their motivations behind exactly what they want to do and why they're in this game. And that's what I think is really interesting about what you guys put forward. So I just kind of want to ask that question to the two of y'all and to the chat. Should property managers be thinking more about behavioral motivations of owners than they think about the property itself? Because I know when I brought in properties as a PM, I would go, my first question was about the property. How big is it? How many bedrooms? Where is it located? What's its condition? You know, all of these things, like, can I get this leased? Is usually the first thing that I would ask. But I'm wondering if you think that based on the data that you've seen, we should be thinking more about the behavioral motivations of the owner first and a little bit less about the exact property less. So, Peter, you
Yeah.
seem like you're.
I had a experienced property manager tell me one time that we're not in the property management business, we're in the people management business. And we've all had, heard many variations on that theme, and I think they're generally correct. I have a vivid memory of early in the business, first few years managing properties professionally. I really thought that if we nailed the property management part, meaning the structure and the lot, if we cared for those physical items properly, everyone would love us. How could they not? And, that's the engineer part of me, thinking that everyone thought the way that I did. But quickly learned that it actually almost didn't even matter how well you took care of the home. If you weren't nailing the people part of it, it was irrelevant, and people would say horrible things about you, think horrible things about you, if they felt like you didn't care about them or felt like you weren't getting back to them fast enough or whatever. No matter how well you cared for the home and the tenants and everything. So the answer is obviously yes. You need to think a lot about how your owners are sort of psychologically tied to these properties and to the outcomes, whether they're financial or otherwise, that they have in mind when they engage with a property manager. Only good things can happen from spending time dwelling on how to categorize your owners, how to meet them where they are, how to understand their expectations, how to set their expectations, how to educate them. The physical management of the property and the work orders and the money and everything, you obviously have to get that stuff right. That's all quite solvable. The people part of it, I find to be much harder and less intuitive, less standardized, and less prescriptive. It's hard to find great guidance here. Like a lot of people are just, oh, just be great with customer service or just answer the phone all the time really fast. Like the practical implementation of that advice is very difficult.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Jordan, go ahead.
Can you go back to that other chart, the hexagon?
This or this guy?
Yeah. Yeah, this is how I would answer this. Look at the size of the gap between the exiters and the holders. It's smaller, but the gap between the holders and the expanders is much, much wider. Somebody who is actively buying, or even better, buying and selling the asset is showing a commitment to the asset class. And it's the kind of commitment that is necessary. So these are things you can ask about. These are things that you can find evidence of, and these are obviously ways you can capture value from. But I think it makes a massive difference, and that's what the data is showing us. The folks that are more active in the category that have a thesis, they're doing a lot. They're more disposed to use a property manager to see value, to defer to you as the expert. They're more comfortable with AI because this is a business. This is an ongoing concern that transcends and is bigger than the two nickels that they're tripping over if they're trying to get out of the business. If you're getting out of the business as a landlord, it's zero sum. Every last nickel matters. So why not club and squeeze your property manager as hard as you can? So I think that what the data shows us quite clearly is that motivations along this axis matter tremendously.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Peter, just to make it practical, what are some, as somebody who's probably dealt with a lot of property owners, what are some behavioral questions that you would want to know the answer to for, from an owner before, if you wanted to find out their motivations, if you wanted to understand what they were in it for and if they were the right fit for you guys or not?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of the questions that most property managers know to ask now, like, what are your plans for this property? How long do you plan to hold on to it? Are you looking for other rental properties? Do you own any other rental properties? Have you ever worked with a property manager? And you can also ask, I like to ask questions about sort of financial resilience, like, you know, it's not uncommon to have large unexpected expenses over the course of, owning a rental property. Would you be able to handle, a capital call on the order of $10,000 for a new AC or a roof or something like that, and see how they react to that? So, for a while we were trying to psychologically label our clients. There's like a bunch of different personality profiling things you can use here. I think I've written about before, but um, the other thing that, of course, now I've been writing about how we moved to like a pods structure, and so in that arrangement, the client has a much more one-to-one relationship with their property manager, and sometimes those relationships break down. And the nice thing about pods is you can have an opportunity with that owner to say, "Would you like to be assigned to a new property manager?" Because sometimes there's just a personality clash. You get that, Brad. I'm sure you've dealt with even a profit coach once in a while, You have a client who just doesn't gel with somebody at your company, and if you just make their main point of contact someone else, those problems go away. So,
Hmm.
yeah, a lot of the my evolution as a business leader in this space has dovetailed with my evolution as a human and my the deepening of my understanding of psychology and what motivates people and how people feel valued and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Okay. I want to talk about this because I want to steelman the case for some of the maybe non-traditional answers to this question. So, going back to those four segments, and I'll flash back to it, which segment should PM companies be most excited about from a growth perspective? So, these are the four again: expanders, holders, repositioners, and exiters. Is there one that sticks out to you as as a clear cut, like, go after these people, find out what motivates them, find out how to find them, and add them to your portfolio? Or does the answer to that question really depend solely on the sort of property management company that you're trying to build?
Hmm.
Because I'll just give my cards away on this question while you think about it, which is you look at this and you're like, oh, expanders. Of course. I want people who are growing their portfolio. And maybe that's true. They're planning to buy more units and not planning to sell their growth clients. That sounds pretty good. But if you have a really good in-house brokerage team and you make really good money on buying and selling properties for your clients, you might prefer repositioners. You might even be perfectly happy with exiters. Oh, you want to get out in a year, but you want somebody to manage this for a year? Great. We'll charge you a high lease up fee and we'll get a tenant in there. And then when you want to sell it in a year, we'll be, with your property management contract, there'll be this agreement that we're going to be the ones to sell your home and we're going to make many dollars off of you. And we're going to be the one property management company that actually can service your needs while you have them for this next year or two. So I'm just curious how you take that.
Well, knowing all the data from the report, repositioners are by far your best client in a lot of different
Okay.
dimensions. So now we don't do brokerage, so I don't stand to make that much from transactional revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just the type of person who doesn't like a lot of churn, like I don't want to say churn, but I don't like a lot of activity in my client base of homes coming and going. Because I have this idea that in the first year that we manage any property, we break even at best. And it's year two plus where we actually are profitable. And the numbers don't show that, but it's hard to pull that out because a lot of it doesn't show up in the numbers. I don't know if that
Because
makes
it's
sense,
it's
but
communication time, it's
yeah,
back and forth, it's getting to know the property.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Like if you were to bill on an hourly rate, your
Mhm.
average fee across the lifetime of a client, you would be billing so much in that first year and very little after the first year. But anyway, so for us, I would love expanders, even though a lot of the data shows throughout this report that repositioners are technically the best.
Mhm.
Just a kind of a weird side note I'll mention. Whenever an investment property changes hands, I always kind of can't help but laugh because, like, think about a duplex selling for $1 million today, and your client owns it. I mean, your client paid 600 for it, 5 years ago. Think about the buyer of that duplex, right? They're willing to pay $1 million for this duplex, and yet the seller, whose basis is only 600, is like, I don't even want it. Like imagine how excited the buyer would be if they could get it for 600 in today. And yet the seller who's in that exact same position is like, I'm good. You can just take, I don't want it anymore. Like, I don't know. Something about that just never makes sense to me. I'm like, well, if you only like I would kill to have, this duplex for 600. You have it and you don't even want it. Like, what am I missing here? I don't know. There's something about like time value of money, and it's an interesting psychological thing where you're almost that same person, right? The same person who sells the duplex for 1 million is now going to go look for a deal on some other property And you're like, yeah, you had the deal. You had the thing
You
that you
had
would
a
have
deal.
wanted. You got rid of it, and now you're looking for another one. I don't know.
So you're on team hold. You're on team hold the asset. You're a holder,
Yeah. That's right.
and you understand the mind of holders better.
Yeah, and the transaction fees in real estate are
They're crazy.
crushingly high. You
Yeah.
know,
Mhm.
think about if every time you sold a stock, you had to pay a variety of fees that added up to around 10% of the stock's value. That's the situation in real estate, and I'm not just talking about realtor fees. I'm talking about closing costs, improvements, taxes. Like I could add it up. It's more than 10%. It's brutal.
Hmm. Hmm. Jordan, you have a take on this?
I have no strong feelings here other than you're not picking off of a shelf. You're not doing demographic targeting. You can do some clever stuff looking at records of who's buying and who's selling. I think that's probably useful and interesting. But really, it's like, what do you want to turn people into? What do you want to facilitate? How do you want to help? How do you want to serve? Do you believe in buying in your market? Do you believe in repositioning in your market? If so, those are conversations to facilitate, knowing that however people become an expander or a repositioner, it leads to better outcomes for you and them. Therefore, it's a conversation that you are clearly incentivized to have and facilitate. There's an obvious caveat. If you don't have a brokerage function or you do not benefit from a sale and they do sell, yeah, that's a net negative for you. But I mean, I'd look hard at that. That in and of itself is a significant conflict. The client needs to sell; it's in their best interest, and it hurts you. That's kind of an existential business problem. That's probably another webinar.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. Let me share the results from this poll. So about a third of you said that growth came from mostly the right clients. And then the other two, and then almost half a mix of right and wrong fit. That I think that's pretty normal. 20% not really growing. Only one person, woohoo, came from mostly the wrong fit. And so that's really why I wanted to bring this up, is that I still, and we at Profit Coach, because we're talking to property managers on a daily basis, it's still actually not that common to have these. Doug has been in the chat really helpfully talking about how he doesn't even walk properties. He interviews owners for an hour and a half. They have to have the right answers to his questions for him to even give them permission to sign a PMA. And Doug has grown from 0 to 500 units in 2 years. And so, and that's a foreign concept to me, because when I ran a PM company, it was all about the property. And for most PMs, it still really is all about the property. Someone calls, it's like, great, when can I get out to the property so I can look at everything? And there is a lot of
Mm.
virtue in that. There is a lot of, I think, you don't have to take Doug's road. You can take the traditional route of like, all right, great, let's go look at the property. Just make sure you're at least also asking these questions about what are their plans, what do they want to do, so you know what you're getting into before you sign up, because it's
Well,
a it's a two-way street. Go ahead.
the specifics of the property don't really matter. I mean, everything is repairable, solvable in terms of the physical asset. What
If they
matters
have the
is,
money.
well, if they have the money, and yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at, is like what matters is what is their response when you
Mm-hmm.
tell them what's going on with their property.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is
That's
what I'm
fair.
saying. If you're trying to get out, this is a zero sum game. There's no
Hmm.
investment. Any additional cost is bad. If you're buying and selling, you're going big. Well, you eat some shots, but like, hey, it all washes out in the end because I'm pursuing my real estate journey. You know,
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, the last question here was actually, what should you do to understand the behavioral motivations of their owners? I think we just got that down pretty good. So I want to move on to pricing, fees, and the revenue evolution of PM companies. Okay, this is such an interesting graphic. Because I think about revenue per unit all the time. I think about uh, the appetite and the willingness of property owners to pay, certain fees. So you guys created this. Why don't one of you walk us through this real quickly, and then we'll kind of get into this and some other data around this topic.
Yeah, so we basically asked landlords, some of whom working with a property manager, some of who previously worked with a property manager, some of whom don't currently. Does your property manager charge these fees? Well, the question's right there. What tenant fees are normal for your property manager to charge and or keep? We had
Mhm.
those four options. Charged and the property manager keeps it all. Charged and the property manager shares it with me. Charged and I get to keep it all, or we don't charge it, or we're not sure. And so we listed the most common types of tenant fees here. This is about tenant fees. Late fees, lease signing application fees, lease violation fees, application fees, pet fees, tenant benefit package. And you can see the breakdown there by the color, with yellow being charged and the property manager keeps it all, etc. So what jumped out to you about this graph, Brad? I think you texted me about one of these
All right. Here's
responses.
what, yes, this is what jumped out to me. The audacity of a property owner to presume that they should get some of the application fee. That 35% of application 35% of owners think that application fees should be shared with the owner when the PM has to do everything involved with an application fee. You do not make, unless you charge really high application fees or you have like the world's most perfect process, you do not make a killing on application fees because there are just so many little intangibles. There's so many little conversations back and forth. You do
Tenants
all
think
this
we do,
work.
though. Tenants think that's
Yeah,
all profit.
They think we just rake it in. It's
it's a
like,
scam.
They're just like, this company, literally, like in the Google reviews, like, this is a scam company. All they do is make their money on application fees. They just charge
50
application fees.
bucks.
Yeah.
50 bucks.
Yeah.
yeah, my whole $5, Trace. That's right. So yeah, the application fee. We've got hard costs on the application fees. We've got soft costs on the application fees. We've got to go back and forth with the tenant on the application fees. And the owner thinks you should split it with me. That's what got me. That's what got me. Actually, 13 of them, 13% say no, you should give it all to me, and then 13% you shouldn't. You should not be compensated at all for your application fees.
You know, any city could be bumper stickered as something, and this study could be bumper stickered as they don't know. They don't
Yeah,
know
sure,
what's
sure.
actually happening. Not that they don't know what should be happening. They don't know what's actually happening. They're just far enough off that it's like, yeah, that's kind of like a distorted version of reality. I can see how you think that, but that's definitely not it. So that came up in so many places, including what fees are actually being collected. Simply their
Yeah,
awareness of what's actually
yeah,
coming in is really disconnected from reality.
Well, that's
right.
because a lot of those accounts are suppressed on the owner statement. That's part of
Well,
why.
Say more.
Well, most all property management software, to my knowledge, lets you suppress and does by default certain income accounts. And so those charges to tenants and payments to the property manager never show up on the owner's statements.
it's
It's
disclosed. You're not saying people aren't disclosing, right?
Not
There's a
disclosed. Yeah,
disclosing. Of
disclosed.
course, it's disclosed. Everything's disclosed, Jordan.
right.
Um, but yeah, and so like for us, our owners don't see the resident benefit package, late fees, application fees. Those things don't show up on their owner statement. They're collected by the tenant, or they're collected by us from the tenant and they're paid out to us. And even if an owner statement were to run between those two events, it doesn't show up, even though that money is kind of like technically in their account. It's tied to their property. So every once in a while, I'll see someone make a post on LinkedIn saying, like, this is not right. We shouldn't have these suppressed accounts. I don't know. Just thought I'd throw that out there. I don't necessarily agree with that. We still do it, but it's interesting that we have this like norm in our industry where we suppress certain fees from visibility to our property owners, and just helps explain why some of these things are, the answers they don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, they
So
don't know. Go ahead.
when you think about regulation coming in, generally not exciting, right? Who's excited about more regulation? But when you think about the basis of the regulation and the difference between regulators pretending that they're advocating for a group of people whose interests they don't really understand and doing it in a ham-fisted way, what this tells me is that part of the motivation driving regulation is the fact that there is a disconnect between what people are aware of and what is actually happening, which in general just creates a ripe circumstance for regulation and it creates room for headlines. Did you know that there's this thing called fee maxing and revenue optimization, and it's this evil societal good, etc.? So it informs my opinion and belief that we are going to continue to see the regulatory environment catch up with the innovation in our space that has taken place over the last number of years. Over the next decade, I don't see how it's not going to catch up.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure. Okay. So I think those are good points. So, two things here. They don't necessarily, not all owners know what fees are being charged. And so when they ask what fees are fair, they're kind of coming up with a conceptual answer, not really oh, my PM does that and I think it's fair or not. And then on the other side of the coin there, they don't know how some of these things work. To your point. Yeah. $50 application fee. PM company makes $49 because it costs them $1 to look at the application and reject it. Also not how it works. So there's an educational gap here. This was a super interesting finding. Willingness to accept lower returns for professional management. This was the question. How willing would you be to sacrifice some cash flow to ensure a better renting experience for your tenants? 37% very willing, 55% somewhat willing, and only 5% of people say, under no circumstances would I sacrifice some cash flow for a better renting experience for your tenants. Is this because people are kind at heart? Is this because people understand that if they provide a better experience for their residents, they are more likely to get a renewal and not have to deal with turnover costs? Like, how do you think people are thinking about this? It surprised me that this many people said, sure, I'd give a concession for a better experience. This was a very high number to me. I would have thought it would be like 60%, maybe 65%.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about this in a couple different webinars and stuff. There's, it's one of those things where we wish we could go and ask more questions of the owner about this,
Yeah.
and we
I
will
heard you guys talk about
in a
that.
follow-up study. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it was shocking to me as well, extremely shocking. And I want to learn how to tap into this part of the owner's brain, right? Like, where is this part of the owner's brain when they're refusing to replace the air conditioning and it's 95 degrees out? Like, can we connect these pieces, these parts of their brain together? So
It's one of the beauty about a survey is what do people think? Well, we don't know what people think. We just presented them with the question, and you can read the question. But I certainly wanted to ask the follow up question of, so, given your answer, what did you think that question meant? Can I have a follow up of like what you thought the question meant? Because
Yeah.
it just seems so disconnected from the practical day to day experience. But that's the language. That's what they saw. That's what they answered.
it might also just be that like they had in their mind like $10,
Sure.
like we just said some cash flow.
Yeah,
Some cash flow.
fair.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I look forward to some refined questions on that and getting a little bit more detail about what they're thinking about with some specifics as well. But it's still really interesting. Okay, this is very clear. I would say there's a lot less ambiguity on this, and this is where Todd made a big deal about this when you guys came out with this, and I think he was right to do that. I'm not surprised that this is what he did, but this is kind of right in his wheelhouse. But it's in ours too because we are constantly trying to help property managers do two things: reduce expenses and be more efficient, increase the LER, right? Reduce overhead and grow revenue. And that's a function of revenue per unit. Your management fee can only be so high. Where does your profit come from? It comes from finding ancillary revenue, creating value add opportunities, experiences, services for owners and tenants, and then charging them for the pleasure. Now, what's surprising here is that what most people think, especially when they first come into Profit Coach, they haven't done the ancillary revenue thing. They haven't really tried, to do these sort of things to drive RPU. They think no one is going to want to do this.
That
No
would
one
never
would.
work in my market.
That would, well, goodness gracious, I'd be a rich man if I had a dollar for every time I've heard that. That would never work in my market. Not with my owners. Well,
Yeah.
this is a nationwide survey. Which
You
services
haven't
from
met
a
my owners.
yeah, I met my owners. Which services from a property management company would you be willing to pay extra for? Not would you pay, if they stuck it with you, would you still pay it and not churn? But would you be willing to pay extra for asset management, financial forecasting, locating new properties? Half of them. Quarterly property inspections, half of them. Man, so much money left on the table with people who don't do paid property inspections. Mid-lease inspections are amazing ways to drive revenue. And half of owners say, I would willingly pay extra for it. I want eyes on my property. Tenant damage protection, 50%. All in one financial services, 50%. Instant rent, 43%. Lost rent protection, 42%. Professional pictures, 41%. So lots of opportunity here. Tell me, did this break your brain when you saw it? Or did you see this coming and you've known for a long time that we're just not doing enough to offer people the opportunity to buy more from us once they've bought from us the first time, which, by the way, is a great signal that they'll buy from us again because they've already bought from us. There was a question in there, but go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised, surprisingly high. I mean, I was expecting like single digits, like 6% would pay extra for this, 9% would pay extra for that. I wasn't expecting half of all respondents to say yes to most of these. So, yes, I was surprised. Now, again, you're like, they say yes on a survey when rubber meets the road and you ask them to cough up an extra $100 a month for asset management across a 10 unit portfolio. Are they really willing to do that? Then we'll find out. This kind of reminds me of like anytime you do a survey or like products, you're introducing a product and like some guy on Reddit's like, I have an invention. Would you pay, would you want some gadget that helps you sleep better? And everyone's like, yeah, 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 yeah. And then that guy releases the product and it's like $200 and no one buys it, like not even one person. Um, so it's a little bit of that, but nevertheless, I still think this is signal. And I've been on the record quite a bit recently about what you were just saying, Brad, about like if people are already buying stuff from us, let's give them an opportunity to buy more. And I've talked about how like in software companies, this is like gospel. Like, of course, you come out with new products. Look at Profit Coach, look at Lead Simple. You guys have both released multiple products, and in your case, services, Brad, that you sell to existing customers, and they're happy to pay for because they already know, like, and trust you. Um, Property managers don't have that option right now, or well, they do, but it's not normal. You just wait
Yeah,
for your customer to bring you another property instead of coming up with a product or service that you can sell to them. So here's an opportunity to either offer these as one-offs, incorporate them into packages, bundle these up as an owner benefit program. There's lots of ways to do this, but it gives us a direction.
yeah. And you made a good point, and then Jordan, I want you to jump in. You made a good point on your podcast, your uh, Peter Lohman podcast with Jordan last week or the week before. There's no easy mechanism to do this.
Hmm.
Like it doesn't, we don't have the, oh yeah, just add it into your cart or click a button and it'll go into your subscription. Everything's property based. It's, we have to create some sort of rails for, maybe we don't have to create them. I don't know. Maybe there's a better idea out there, but we don't have an easy way for owners to buy these portfolio, these things that cover
Exactly.
like relationship based products.
Everything's tied to a property on the back
Mm,
end of the
mm,
accounting, and it's a
mm.
real issue. Kelsey says, why am I scared of asking my owners to pay more for anything? I think that's because, Kelsey, historically in property management, everything we go and talk to our owners about is essentially required. Hey, your AC broke. We have to fix it. Hey, your unit's vacant. We have to pay a bunch of money to fix it up. Hey, your unit got leased. You have to pay me a leasing fee. That's always a little uncomfortable. What actually makes this fun and exciting is that you can make all this optional.
Optional.
It's
Everything optional.
optional.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
totally optional. It's like, oh, great news, Mr. Owner. We have a new completely optional program for you. Let me tell you about the benefits. If you're interested, I'll get you signed up right away using your card on file. If you're not interested, no problem. You can continue to expect great property management service from us. What could be a less stressful And like property managers don't even know what to do with this because we're so used to every conversation being like tense and like
Okay.
stressful.
Okay. Are you sitting down?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Jordan.
exactly. Your confidence about what you're selling. The reason people in general feel scared asking for money is that they lack confidence in the value of the thing that they're selling. If you thought you were essentially selling a dollar for 50 cents, I'd be like, hey, you want this? Like, I got you want this? Oh, you don't want it? Like, oh, weird. Okay, whatever. As opposed to, the inverse, you have some internal self-suspicion. So as you look at this list here, some of these things you're immediately are like, wow, that is a value. And others you're going to be skeptical of. You shouldn't be selling anything that you yourself are skeptical of. So the opportunity here is to pick out things that you as a user and a consumer feel like have real demonstrable value, and then to do the work to figure out how to tee it up and make it happen. I agree with what Peter said that historically there has been a really broad expectation, in part stemming from a sloppy scope of services where it is kind of all included in the base management fee. And I look at certain things like asset management, I'm really skeptical that somebody's going to come up with a construct to tack asset management on. Like, here's the basic thing, but like that to me it feels like here's the basic thing, but if you really want us to act like a fiduciary, like that's an extra $100 a month. I don't know. I get we should all be doing it, but charging separate for that, I'm a little more skeptical of. Other things like instant rent payments, that's math. That's a very clear mathematical proposition. Some people will see value, some won't, etc.
Yeah, and this little tidbit on the right here is very relatable, probably to all of the gentlemen on the panel today. But parents are significantly more interested across all premium services, likely driven by time scarcity. Childcare leaves less bandwidth for property oversight.
Yes.
Yes, I mean we're prime suspects, prime targets to be sold things where we can trade money for time, and that's what a lot of this is, or money for risk, or what have you. So yeah, and it's not a fair housing violation to try to upsell the parents in your portfolio on some of these services, right? This is the one place where you're actually allowed to do that. Okay. So I guess my question alongside this is we kind of just addressed it, but I'm curious if you have a question, if you have an answer here. But you know, there's a statement in this question, but it's is the industry too focused on avoiding fee complaints, avoiding the phone calls of why am I charging this fee, that fee, instead of actually being more worried about designing better value packages with more optionality? I think we hit that pretty good. Do either of you have a comment about how we might package or present those to the market?
I love what Anna said in the chat. She said it to hosts and panelists. I think she probably meant to send to everybody. She said, owners don't seem to ever want to pay more for essentials. Why would you think they would pay more for optional? They have us convinced they are penny pinching misers. I love that. I love that from Anna. And that is exactly how I feel. And I think a lot of us are feeling that or sensing that as we think about these optional services that are above and beyond the base management fee. I think that's something we need to grapple with and understand how much of this is made up in our head and how much of it is we're pulling it out of our owners by coming to them with these things they have to do. You have to do this, you have to do that. That doesn't put someone in a buying mood. What puts someone in a buying mood is putting a bunch of things that look really awesome. Back to Jordan's thing about like, here's a bunch of dollars on sale for 50 cents. That puts somebody in a buying mood.
Yeah,
Um,
sure does.
so yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a mindset issue that we have to overcome, and then there's a presentation issue that in which this needs to look a lot different than the conversations that we've been having with them about the problems that they need to solve with their dollars. Yeah.
The only thing I have to say about this is if it is not of interest to you to know if your owners are making money and if owning their rental managed by you is financially lucrative or a money loser for them, like if that is of interest to you, and you can know if it's of interest based on whether or not you know for each property, that's probably going to break down at some point. I mean, I can tell you with certainty that will break down. It doesn't matter what's being sold if people aren't getting value, and value here is defined as having the durability and stability to stay in it. So put yourself in
Mhm.
their shoes and figure out if they're actually making money. So the complaints to me are kind of secondary to just the practical reality of, is your landlord actually making money, or is your fee structure handicapping or preventing them from making money? And those two things don't necessarily need to be uh, fully juxtaposed. There can be other factors in there, but at the end of the day, you got to make sure this is a sustainable proposition for your landlord, regardless of whether or not they started off broke or rich.
Yeah. Yep. That's good. Okay. I'm actually going to skip some of this because I definitely want to hit the last bit. This I'm skipping the part that we sponsored and contributed to. I guess I'll just go over it very quickly, which is what are landlords willing say that they're willing to accept, and then what does our data show on PM adoption? Big gaps here on two, and this always just blows my mind. I know that people have their reasons, but pet fees and RBPs, and I know that some states make it harder to do these things than others, but there's a big gap between what landlords say they will pay for and what PMs are actually charging. And then over here, how much that actually will put in your pocket in terms of RPU in dollars per month. Those inspections, tenant damage protection. You can look at these numbers. Those are not insignificant numbers. In fact, they're very high numbers. With any sort of portfolio volume, that's going to make you tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars over here. So if you didn't get a chance to look at our slide from the report, please do. I think or we have a couple different ones. I think it's pretty interesting data. Yeah, PMs are not doing, we're not adopting these fee structures at the rate that landlords are. That's the big takeaway. We're not adopting them at the rate that landlords are telling us that they're willing to pay for them. And therefore, we're leaving money on the table. You have to figure out how to make the ask on a lot of this. Okay, 3 questions just to think through. We're getting into this last question where what's the future? Where are we going? Where the industry is going. That's supposed to be a question. Where is the industry going? That's what the PM Trends report asks, and that's what we learn from that data. Where do you stand? That's the information, a lot of information that you get from Profit Coach based on these benchmarks, based on my data. Where am I today? The big question that everybody always wants to answer is, where should you go next? What should I do next? In order to answer this, you need 2 things. You need clean, sanitized data. You need data that can be benchmarked to industry standards so you can know exactly where you stand. You have to have that line in the sand and understanding of your position relative to the industry. And then that's not enough, right? You need to know what to do with that. Turn that data into actionable insights. Make your decisions easier. Making them easier means identifying the behavior that's causing the outcome, the not good outcome, and then having a clear roadmap to make an impact and get the outcome that you actually want. And that's what Profit Coach does. So quick pitch here, instead of the usual, here's the 7 things we'll cover on this call, I want to just make it really, really easy. Would you like to book a call with us to look at your numbers and help you know what to do next? That has been the big insight for me over the summer post-conference season as I'm thinking about PMs and their problems and how we can add value to help solve those problems. Yeah, everybody wants to know, what does the next 5 years look like? Everybody wants to know, what are the 10 things wrong with my business I can fix? But I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of overwhelm in property management, and you look at your P&L and you look at your numbers and you're overwhelmed because you don't know what you need to do next. And so we are laser focused right now on helping solve that specific problem for you based on your situation and where you stand. What do you need to do next? So if you want some help answering that question, you can scan that QR code that will allow you to book a meeting with somebody from our team, or you can respond on the poll here and we'll reach out to you and get that scheduled. No pressure to do that, but we provide a lot of value in that call, and I think we can help you answer, what do I do next? Okay, speaking about next, the future of property management, man, this was another one that kind of baked my noodle here. The expectations for communication for landlords for us to get back to them are very, very high. So within 1 hour, over the phone, 88% if you add those up. Within 1 hour, text or SMS, which I don't even know what an SMS is anymore. I think we just call those text messages now, right? It's quick math, 86%. Okay. And then even on an email, within an hour, well more than half, you got to get back to me within an hour. The old standard, obviously, of like 24 hours, one business day, that's obviously long gone. But I think the new standard has been by the end of the day or within a few hours. And even that is not even close to fast enough for landlords for what they're telling us. So, Peter, tell me, when you saw this, did you have any so were you surprised by this? And did you need to go back to your team at RL Property Management and say, look at this. Last year you said phone now. Pick up the phone and call them. Did you say, hey, your phone needs to be 5 inches in
Yeah,
front of your face at all times?
needed to go back to my office and get a drink is what I needed to do. Yes, and this isn't even supposed to be the average. The question was, what is the maximum amount of
Mm-hmm.
time?
Mm-hmm.
So this
Oh,
isn't like,
yeah.
yeah. So
Maximum.
yeah, you just we ha I don't think you need to respond to every client within an hour, but we do need to find ways of getting closer to that and making it so that they perceive your company as responsive. I think that's what the underlying, if I was to like get into the brain of the people who took this survey, what they're asking for is a responsive property manager. I think, is it Mark Ainley who says they're Chicago's most responsive property manager? Somebody uses
Smart.
that tagline. It's always stuck with me, and I bet it works really, really well for them. Because so many times when we pick up a new owner client from another competitor of ours, like they're coming from that competitor to us, they will say, "Yeah, and I can never get a hold of anyone over there," or they never get back to me. That's probably the number one most common thing that we hear. So, you know, we need to out. So sometimes I think about like the $129 a month we get from each rental owner per property, or, it's not exactly that, whatever it is for you. Sometimes I think about how to apportion those dollars, right? Where should that money be spent? That $129 per unit per month that we get, specifically from the rental owner. Not talking about our total RPU, but from the rental,
Sure.
like how do we account how should we spend those dollars? I think what we're hearing in the survey is they want more of those dollars spent on staff that can communicate quickly and expertly with them. And to me, that means like property manager or account manager. It seems like that's where they want some of their dollars spent implicitly. So the exact technical details of how you do that, what software you use, and all these things, and like how you configure your phone trees and your inbox, and like how you train your staff. Obviously, that's all really important and should be thought about and hashed out and figured out, and lots to say there. We could do a whole webinar on that, but that's just like where my brain goes when I see this.
Jordan, anything to add there?
Yeah, everybody's going to make a decision around what they want to do with this information. The expectations on their face seem unreasonable. And I think right now, this convergence of what's happening with AI actually creates some really interesting opportunities. It's easy to generalize about, well, I don't want to talk to AI or it's not great. But man, there's plenty of instances in which I have zero problem talking to AI. McDonald's drive through. Hey, give me AI. Waiting forever, talking to the IRS. Give me AI. So in this instance, it's single family residential property management. That's the bucket. But you can break out the type of request, what they're looking for, who they are, prospective tenant, prospective owner, current owner, vendor, etc. There are clearly use cases where giving somebody an instant reply with not incomplete information from not the most qualified person in the company, but it's coming in instantly is going to be a value add. So this isn't wholesale on or off. Do I sell my soul or not? It's selective. And in the instances where you're confident that you can get an 80% correct answer instantly, do that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my feedback here. It's like apply nuance and selectivity. Don't make this an AI versus human binary either or paradigm.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's helpful. Okay, we're gonna wrap it up here. This was from our 2024 survey where we said, hey, what's a good average response time that you should shoot for? Lowest quartile, 24-hour rule, highest quartile within an hour. The median was 4 hours. So obviously the world has changed a lot in 2 years. Maybe I don't know how much people have changed in the last 2 years. So I think there are still a lot of mindsets here around as long as I can get an answer by the end of the day, it's going to be good enough. And what we're seeing from here is that's definitely not the case.
Yeah,
So yes,
it's call routing. That's just the last thing I'm going to say about that. It's about
yeah,
call routing. If there's 20 calls, you don't know who's on the other end. You're going to get a really unsatisfactory outcome. If you know it's a prospective owner, you're going to respond faster than if you know with certainty it's a prospective tenor. So call routing is a really big deal.
yeah, yeah, that's good. And that answers all of that answered this question pretty well. Yeah, so call routing is a good solution to that. Okay, thanks guys. Well, we're gonna wrap it up here. I will save this cliffhanger for a different episode where you guys can predict the future about what's going to happen in 4 years from now. But until then, I would invite you to join us for the next Profit Power Hour, July, a very special month, the 1st and the 31st, basically because I was unavailable for the whole month of June. I pulled a Peter Lohman. So we're going to do our next one, July 31st at noon Central. Hope you will join us. Thank you to Jordan and Peter for joining us. Thank you for everybody in the chat who participated. Always a pleasure. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Great to see everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.